Hey guys, Victoria Haffer here. And I thought I would pop on real quick just to talk a little bit about my story. I don't talk a lot about myself. I usually get right down to it. So I thought for some of you who might want to know who the frick is Victoria Haffer and, what is my mission and, where I came from and all that good stuff. So let's just get to it. So I started as a teenager in the fitness industry. So clearly my divine purpose and soul, I wasn't super spiritual as a kid. So I didn't have all the tools and the tricks and the guidance and the knowing that I have today when I was younger. But I was absolutely divinely supported. Little did I know at that time. So I started as a fitness instructor at the age of 14. At 17, I was teaching group fitness classes. We called it aerobics in those days, right, in the 80s. And I was also certifying group fitness, that we called them, again, aerobics instructors in the days. And then by the age of 23, I was certifying personal trainers and traveling all over the world. So I did pursue a master's degree in exercise science, health, fitness with a minor in health promotion. And so, and then I went in and I did a lot of upper level managing in the health club industry. So I would say for a good 20 years, my focus was on health, fitness, wellness, the physical body, and really learned and mastered that piece of it, right? So, and that's really where my coaching started. And we called us a, personal trainer, health coach in the day. And so my main focus was on the physical body. And then I started to move it. Yoga came to me. It literally came to me. It was interesting. This was way before yoga was on every street corner. This was well over 20 years ago. And one of the companies that I was working for, it was a Fitness Resource Associates, and it would, we were teaching all kinds of workshops and seminars in the fitness realm. And they started, because they were such a pioneer in the industry, they started teaching yoga certifications. Again, at that point, it was, not really heard of. There were some hot yoga studios around, but not much going on there. So I did become certified as a yoga teacher. I didn't really take it seriously initially. I always say that yoga, it's the thing that snuck up on me that, I had no idea how much it was going to change my life. So for then the next 20 years, I embarked on the yoga meditation journey. I trained with hundreds of yogi masters from all over the world. I lived in an ashram, a Sikh ashram in Massachusetts, the Guru Ramdas ashram. And I was the director of the Yoga Retreat Center. So we were a non-denominational center inside of the Sikh ashram for approximately 5 years. And so there it was, again, yoga, wellness, meditation. I was teaching a lot of classes at that time. Often I would, I was still doing group fitness. So I was teaching yoga, core, Pilates instructor. I taught pretty much every kind of group fitness class there was, muscle conditioning, boot camp classes, and everything except for spin. So at that point, I started to really integrate the yoga into the fitness. And I was attending a lot of flow classes, a lot of vinyasa classes. And I really started to notice that my body didn't feel really good in the practice and after the practice. And so I was like, well, what would I want and what would feel good for me? And I was, in my 30s and pretty fit. So I created my own style of yoga called Body Matrix, and it is a fusion of conscious movement. So yes, there's yoga in it, yoga, dance. Now I've incorporated Qigong into it. So a lot of energy practices, as well as myofascial release via using small balls, and really cultivating the term postural repatterning. So again, still moving into the spiritual realm, doing more meditation, but also still mastering that physical body. I also did an online coaching and became a coach through Tony Robbins via an online program. And so started to incorporate the coaching. I was still a full-time director of a retreat center, but still coaching and teaching. So it's at times I would teach 15 to 20 classes a week. So again, mastering that aspect of the mind and the body. And the soul, I started to dabble in the spiritual aspect in my early 20s. I'm going to back it up a little bit. I became a Reiki master within, 1 year. So I took level 1, level 2, and then Reiki master teacher. And so all of this stuff started kind of, coming together, and, still always a seeker of knowledge. And I was very, very, very left-brained for so much of my life, where, I was so show me the proof, show me the research. I remember sitting in college and university and sitting in the front row all the time and asking so many questions. And, a big part of my journey was like seeking the happiness and the joy and the deep healing outside of myself, right? So that was a pretty common theme for me, kind of looking for answers constantly outside of myself. And so even though I was in this space of being around meditation, and I was even teaching meditation to people, I honestly was not actively doing my own meditation practice. How many of you can relate to that, where stuff, you've learned stuff, but then you're not fully integrating these wonderful practices and the knowings into your daily life? So again, that was pretty much in my late 30s. And then at the end of my term with the ashram, the grasshopper literally showed up. At that point, I started to really be more open to receiving and perceiving information from my spiritual team, from the universe, from source, whatever you want to call it. And the grasshopper literally showed up. So the grasshopper represents it's time to take the leap. Take the leap and trust that the net will appear. And literally the grasshopper would show up like outside the door. And before this happened, I did not notice grasshoppers hardly at all in the space, in the area where I was living and working. A grasshopper outside my office door, and I lived on the premises as well. Grasshopper outside my apartment door, and you would have to go up like 2 wooden flights of stairs. Grasshopper outside my front door. And even one time there was like a dead grasshopper outside my meditation room, another flight up inside of the space that I was living. So literally I was like, I need to pay attention to grasshopper and what needs to get done. And I remember having a meeting with the board at the space, and telling them that I didn't think I was the person to bring them to the next level. I'd been in that position for almost 5 years. And again, I knew, as much as I loved what I was doing and it felt really good and fulfilling, I knew my soul was leading me in a different direction. And so I gave my notice. And at that time, it was literally the year, we're just coming into the year of the horse in Chinese astrology, and the horse showed up. I've always been a huge lover of animals. Horses, yes, intrigued, but a little scary. Like, I had not been around horses at all as a kid. And so they were these big, beautiful, magnificent creatures that I really didn't understand. And they seemed to move really fast. And so there was definitely some fear around it. I had dabbled in a few sessions with equine facilitation, coaching with horses. And then I decided to invest in a very expensive, amazing 2-year-long certification in Colorado. And so I flew back and forth. So that was 2 years. And then at that point, I started to move more into doing a lot of energy work, healing, and Reiki on people and animals, as well as my own coaching practice started to flourish. So again, this was in my late 30s. And so that was pretty cool. I then moved from Massachusetts to Providence, Rhode Island, and was just dabbling with a lot of things. Again, healing, coaching, experienced my own dark night of the soul. There was a lot of stuff around my relationship with money that started to come up. Even though I'd never had any problems with money, I always had no problem making money. But my biggest challenge was my saving money, right? Me saving money. So that was something to kind of take a look at. My scarcity mindset, growing up, I grew up, my mom, single mom, I had two younger sisters, and I basically had to grow up very, very quickly at a young age, holding space and supporting the family. I even started working because at a young age, at like 13, just because, so I would have money and be able to support and help out the family. My dad was an alcoholic, and he emotionally was not really available, and not available in a lot of different ways. So I grew up in a lot of I would say trauma, in the fact that as a young child, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard. And I really had to grow up very quickly. So again, how many of you might relate to that? So again, fast forward again to leaving the ashram. I moved to Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, and just being in the space of pretty much survival, like really feeling like I was in survival mode. My adrenals had absolutely taken a dive, and I was also battling with chronic anxiety and depression, as well as chronic fatigue, leaky gut. I had a lot of autoimmune stuff going on, and so it was pretty challenging time for me in my life. I met my beloved, which was one of the reasons why I'm guessing we had a soul contract together when I moved to Providence, and we got together, and 6 months later we were like, let's hit the road. And we chose to move to Raleigh, North Carolina. So that was again in my late 40s. So this was moving into my 40s at this point. And we moved to Raleigh, and then I had, animals have always connected with me. And, I remember as a child, like going to zoos and different places that had animals, and I always felt such a great sadness. And I felt like they were actually communicating with me, which they were at the time. I didn't even understand. My dream was always to be Dr. Doolittle. I thought I'll be Dr. Doolittle. And so that's kind of a thing that I've always held near and dear. And, as I was working with the horses, pretty magical. And they started to trust me enough to speak to me, and I would get downloads, and I would share with their owners. And it was always things that, there was no way I would know that I could, and then they would validate it. So I knew that it was true and it was really happening. And the more I was able to step into my heart center, these magical experiences would happen. So I've kind of been, people look at what I've done, fitness, and then yoga, and then coaching, and then the animals, but everything that I've learned and taught has come with me, right? It's become fully integrated. So I'm a master of all of these things. And the animal piece was always so amazing. And so I started doing a lot of work with local and also long distance, in working with people and their animals. And I started to specialize in working with animals, horses and dog. People were like, do you work with dogs? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Yes, I do. And, I just kind of would jump into that. The opportunity would arise, and then I would show up. And then I thought, I got a download. Maybe I should become a professional dog trainer. So basically in my late 40s, I became a professional dog trainer. So all of these things, again, coming in together, understanding, really gave me a good foundation of working with dogs. But what I found was that the best learning that I had was the presence, being in the true presence of working with the dogs, and just being able to understand that each dog is different, right? There's no cookie cutter approach. And I don't believe in dog training or obedience training. I believe in teaching, my clients how to be in a relationship with the dog. And so how to be able to receive and perceive information from them. What does your dog need? Why is your dog, quote unquote, acting up, right? So anyways, all of that space, horses, dogs, and people, we moved on to Raleigh. And then I felt like I was pretty much like starting over in that space. So coming back into that space of beginner's mind. And I started to connect with the local people and community. And, I got involved in a lot of women's networking groups, and it was interesting. And then the big COVID hit. So that was basically 2 years of feeling like I was cocooning and coming inward. Although I did have clients, online, and it's taken me a while because I'm like, what do I do? Right. And what do I do? And coming into that space of really trusting in the knowledge, in the information, in the power that I have cultivated through my past experience, and teaching others to step into that space as well. So really what I do is, what I've found in reflecting over the many years of, supporting men and women in their journey along the road to healing, to deep clarity. Same thing. I mean, I've been in the health, wellness, fitness, transformational industry for over 35 years, and I'm changing. I change every day. Every day, I'm a different person than I was yesterday. So, giving people the permission to change what you're doing, right? If it doesn't bring you joy, then where's the evolution, right? Where's the revolution? One of the most powerful tools that I use every single morning is to delete, destroy, and uncreate my relationship with everything and everyone, including yourself. Right. So it's really a big deal. So, even if you went to college for this thing and you've been in this thing and this is what you thought you were supposed to do, if it's not bringing you joy in the moment, it's not the thing now. It was then, but what's happening now? So connecting into that space in every moment, it's, what brings me joy? What is my soul speaking to me? Slowing down. So teaching people how to connect with your higher self, right? Your soul, whatever you want to call it, that thing that's inside of you. It's not outside of you. And that was the other thing. The biggest lie, bullshit lie we have been sold and told is that God is outside of us, right? Or, what you seek is outside of you. Everything is inside of you, connecting to. You have different aspects of you, and the primary aspect of who you are a multi-dimensional being who chose to incarnate into this beautiful physical body in this lifetime for a specific purpose. So maybe you don't even know what that is. Maybe it doesn't matter how old you are, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. If you're questioning your existence, it's not too late. Right? So what is it? What would it take, right, for you to be open to receiving and perceiving something else in your world that would bring you joy and ease and prosperity, right? Just because you're spiritual or on a soul-led path doesn't mean you have to give up all your worldly possessions and sit under the Bodhi tree, right? It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that maybe now is the time to choose something else. And so I am a cheerleader. I am a mentor. I am a teacher. I am a guide. But you know what you know, and you know what you don't know, right? And then you don't know what you don't know. So that's where I come into play. Sometimes, coaches have coaches, healers have healers. And so what I do is I support you on your healing journey, and I shine a light on your blind spots, on the stuff that sits below the surface, right? We call that shadow work. Don't be afraid. It's not scary, right? It's not scary at all. So just coming into that space, imagine this. Just imagine that you were so dialed in to source, spirit, God, goddess, whatever you want to call it, that in every moment you always were in the right place at the right time, and you are constantly divinely guided, right? Like following the spiritual breadcrumbs, right, of your existence, and that you are starting to actually receive and perceive from all of it, from the trees and the birds and the bees and even stuff popping up on social media, or you get something in the mail, or your friend happens to. It's all about frequency, right? Everything is energy and frequency. It's called the metaphysical, right? Science. It is all science. So it's about trusting in the space and coming into that space of divine inner knowing. intuition. And we've been so brainwashed to be in that space of the logical brain. Now, sure, there's definitely a reason for the logical brain, and there's a purpose for it. However, how long have you been not trusting your own inner knowing? And most likely it started as a child, right? So what if you could come back into that space where you just knew stuff? You're just opening. And in the spiritual world, we call it to become in divine alignment. When you're in divine alignment, when everything lines up, literally from your energy centers, your chakras from root to crown, when it all lines up and everything is open and all aspects of you, mind, body, and soul are blending and communicating and in that perfect harmony, that is where the bliss shows up, the joy shows up, all of it. And you deserve it, right? You deserve that. So what would it take for you to choose you? What would it take for you to choose you? Feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, only if it feels light and it feels fun for you. And feel free to put a few words down below. Give me some love. Have a beautiful, blissful day. And I hope to see you soon.